Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Well, welcome everybody. So I'd like to introduce our guest, our teacher today, Donald Rothberg. Donald, feel free, of course, to fill in anything that I've missed about yourself. Donald is a longtime insight meditation practitioner. He's on a leadership council with Spirit Rock Meditation Center. He received training in Tibetan Dzogchen and Mahamudra practices, as well as Hakomi approach to body-based therapy and trauma work. He's also the author of a book called The Engaged Spiritual Life, a Buddhist Approach to Transforming Ourselves in the World. And Engaged Buddhism is one of the many things in which he teaches on. So welcome, Donald. I'll pass the Zoom mic over to you, and thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you, David. And thanks, everyone. It's good to be back. I think I've been coming to GBF meetings once or twice a year for so many years, and I'm also very pleased that the founding of GBF actually came out of a summer institute on socially engaged Buddhism that I was one of the organizers of. And we had gatherings of different kinds, and out of that gathering, GBF was founded. So I've always felt a close heart connection and enjoy coming back. And want to explore this morning for people in the Pacific time zone. I think that also includes the same time for Arizona. I want to explore this morning how we may deepen our daily life practice in the midst of the pandemic. And I want to have a broad sense of what practice means and explore the meaning of deepening daily life practice in terms of deepening formal practice first, also deepening our way of connecting our practice, our mindfulness, our kindness, and so forth with the flow of daily life. And then thirdly, connect that with our service, our work, our activism, our being in the world. And so I wanted really right at the beginning just to invite a moment of looking inside and have each of us ask us, how can I use this time as a way to deepen any sense of my practice that calls to me? Let's just take 30 seconds or a minute right now. What's your inner response to that question? And so I was reflecting, I've been reflecting a lot on how, as we often say, crisis can also be opportunity. And we can see this again on many levels. We can see how the pandemic is revealing aspects of the society more clearly to people that need transformation. The healthcare system, for one, the various inequities that we see in the healthcare system, certainly in terms of those who have got sick and died, being especially Black people and Latinx people. I think I saw the figures the other day for San Francisco 50% of the cases are Latinx, whereas the population is 15%. So we can see those inequities. Of course, the last weeks have let a lot of people turn attention to what is being called more and more systemic racism, or we call it institutional racism. And the energy coming out of the crisis, many people think, is the greatest that it's been in 50 years. I've also heard from many people that I've talked to that the crisis is also affecting people personally and giving a sense of opportunity that for many people, and this may be for many of us, especially as we're home, maybe have for some of us more time, there can be the question coming more fully to the surface. How do I live my life? Or how do I live my life now? I'm hearing that from a lot of people. There are opportunities coming out of this challenging time to refocus one's life in various ways. And that also can be at the level of community. I maybe like many of you, I'm noticing there's a lot more community connection in many ways. And where I live, in my neighborhood, I live in Berkeley, and I've got to know, I would say 5 times the number of neighbors that I knew before the pandemic. For how many people is that true? Something like that, that there's a increase in really connecting with people. So there are these opportunities that we have. You know, some people have more time. Some people are finding that the challenges, maybe the anxiety, the difficulties of the pandemic are also calling forth a need for a deepened sense of practice, how to work with the various thoughts and emotions and so forth. And the suggestion I'm going to make is that actually one of the key aspects of having a spiritual practice is having a sense of what one's next steps are, what one's edge of learning is. And I'm going to encourage us to consider that in terms of these different aspects of practice. I'm very influenced by the mystic and activist and theologian Howard Thurman, who founded the first interracial church in San Francisco, I think in the 40s, and was a teacher for many years at Boston University, and I think Howard University. And he, near the end of his life, he died in 1980, was in conversation with a young man who asked him, "What should I do?" And Thurman was an activist. He might have told him, "We have all these needs for you to help with these projects. Won't you be part of this?" But he didn't say that. He said, "Don't ask what the world needs." Quite a statement for an activist. Don't ask what the world needs, but rather ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And that's really our North Star. That's what we want to try to be in touch with in various ways, in our meditations, in our journaling, in our conversations with those close to us, in listening for our dreams, and so forth. What is alive for me right now? Again, more the lived experience of having a sense of something calling. Not so much because it's a good idea, but because it's genuine. So what I'm going to do is to speak about a few areas, these 3 areas I mentioned: individual formal practice, daily life practice, and then our service, our work in the world. And I'm going to mention a lot of ways to deepen, and I'm going to invite all of us to see what resonates. I'm not suggesting that we do everything I mentioned. I'm suggesting that we maybe listen for 1 or 2 or 3 things that call us. And I thought I'd mention just my own, before going into some of these details, mention my own story of the last months, which has been interesting. I like to do about at least a month retreat every year, and I often do that in February or March at Spirit Rock. And I had signed up for that retreat for the March retreat, which I've sometimes taught, but I like to also just be a retreatant. And I went at the end of February, knowing that things were unpredictable. Had about 2 weeks of retreat at Spirit Rock. Then Spirit Rock closed, went home. I continued the rest of my March retreat at home while also integrating my retreat with, listening to the news, doing email, shopping, and so forth. But I still was doing about 9 hours of formal practice a day. At the end of March, when that retreat was over, I and a friend who I had been talking to every 2 days, we decided to continue. I was having some responsibilities come back, which were mostly some teaching and some mentoring. I do a fair amount of one-on-one work with people. So those responsibilities were coming back. But I said, I want to continue the retreat. And my friend did as well. And I basically have had about 4 or 5 hours of formal practice since then. Now on my 5th month of a kind of at-home retreat. And it's changed in a beautiful way, still challenging, the way that my everyday life is more and more practiced. This has been a real edge of learning for a long time, as it is for many of us. I had been doing I've done retreats for years and years, and they've been wonderful, but how to bring that into the flow of the daily life? Not easy, right? How many people have worked with that challenge? How to bring the practice into the daily flow, right? And so I have felt these last months, I got an answer. I got an answer to that question, which was very meaningful, still challenging, but the pandemic has brought a gift in that way. The crisis has brought a gift, and there's been a way of integrating with my work, my being there out in the world. And after the killing of George Floyd, and there was a lot of really rising of energies, and that interest in connecting inner work and social change has been there for me for almost the entirety of my 40 plus years of practice. I had a certain level of anguish because I was teaching, I was helping others, I was doing a lot of inner practice, but there was an anguish. How can I respond outwardly as well? And it eventually led me to give in several places series of talks actually connecting Buddhist practice with the transformation of racism, which is the talks are on the website Dharma-Seed. And so hasn't all been easy, and there was some anguish. So that's part of my own personal experience out of which this talk comes. So I'll talk about these 3 areas. And again, listen for 1 or 2 or 3 things that resonate with you. And then we'll have some time to talk together about what may have worked for you, things you've learned in the crisis time, any questions you might have. So for some of us, our practice is not regular, and we'd like it to be regular. So for some of us, the crisis, maybe more time at home, can lead one to say, I want my practice to be regular. For some of us, we want to increase the level of formal practice. And that might be what's calling. For some people, I've always had 20 or 30 minutes sitting in the morning. Maybe I do something in the evening. That's what's calling. There's a way that I certainly find when I do more formal practice, and particularly have it at different times in the day, it sort of weaves the day together. And I'm much more likely to have awareness when I'm washing the dishes or taking a walk or doing something. So might be having a second sitting, might be finding more community support. There's so many options with Zoom now. You could be on a Zoom support session once a day or more than that. The key, of course, for any changes we make is to have them be realistic and to find something which is realistic you can commit to for the next week or so every day, and that will help establish as a routine. Another very key practice that I have found very interesting and helpful is finding one or two or three things that you do every day that you can turn into practice routines. It could be, I say, I want to be aware when I'm brushing my teeth, or I want to be aware washing the dishes, or in taking my walks, or whatever. And again, I'm suggesting if this is interesting for you, make a strong commitment for a week to take some 5 or 10 minute period, and have it be a time to cultivate awareness. For some people, the core practice is more that of kindness. Several people I work with are in the helping professions, including at hospitals, and they find ways to bring a sense of kindness into more of the day. That may speak to some of us, having kindness be there more. It might be asking a friend, will you support me in my practice? Can we check in once a week, twice a week for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, finding ways to have that support. Another way is to take on a particular theme for a month. Maybe I take on the theme for a month of working with reactivity or concentration or investigation. Let me really develop interest in my formal sitting. Let me really try to explore what's happening, maybe using the method many of us know called RAIN, where we really say, okay, what's happening right now? What's it like in the body? What are the storylines? Having more interest in one's formal practice. In a similar way, we can deepen the informal practice. I had a very interesting experience in June of leading a 5-day retreat on Zoom, which was called Deepening Daily Life Practice. And we had the retreat, and some people were working. Some people actually were going to demonstrations, and we worked that all into the retreat. So from the beginning, I gave instructions on wise speech, on talking, and I've actually, since the retreat, stayed in touch. I've made optional follow-up groups, and about over half the people have been involved. And so it had a wonderful effect on people's daily life practice. A lot of people have said, my daily life practice, my awareness around the house is really different, around the home, around where you live. But that's also to say that daily life practice for many of us is challenging. We can often be too busy. Is anyone still, quote unquote, too busy during the crisis, during the pandemic? You can raise your hand. How many are too busy? How many are not busy enough? Anyone? Okay. Good. It was good to know. Good. I have to check these out. Check out what's there. But busyness is an issue for many people still. One of the key ways to deepen the flow of daily life practice is by cultivating mindfulness of the body. By having body awareness, this can be something which really brings our practice alive during the day. And so cultivating mindfulness of the body in walking meditation or in even in our sittings, being aware of the whole body can really strengthen body awareness. This can be something we really cultivate. Can I be aware of my body in, again, washing the dishes, brushing my teeth? A main way to really weave the day together, come back to the body over and over again. I remember one Thai teacher said, never let your mind depart from the body. Always have the body in view, so to speak. So that's one way. Another way would be, again, maybe to take a theme that we look at a beautiful way to practice in daily life is to say, I will take any challenges which arise in my daily life as invitations to deepen my practice. So we take challenges not as a problem or a curse, but as opportunities. A Tibetan phrase that I like a lot from the Lojong teachings, turn all obstacles into the path of practice. How would you like to wake up and say that? Turn all obstacles into the path of practice, right? Something difficult happening. Oh, an opportunity for practice. Or as one of my students says, I think many people say this, another effing growth opportunity. Ah, right. Okay. So, but the point is, when we do that, things can really change. And it's not a beginning practice. We need some stability in our practice, and some is probably more of an intermediate or advanced practice. So we can work with challenges. Again, we can bring a sense of kindness or compassion into the flow. A very key practice also during the day is just pausing, stopping for a moment and coming back to yourself, even for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Working with intentions connected with the pausing. How do I have a meeting? What's my intention for the meeting? Working with pauses, working with intentions. You know, we can also work with wise speech, very, very key. Something I teach on a lot. Some of you maybe have practiced that. And then the last area, and again, I'm mentioning these to see what resonates. I'm not saying do everything. See if one or two or three of the things I say resonate, or see if something just resonates or comes to the surface. What is my own edge? And so there may be a sense now, what am I called to do in terms of my work or service? If I have a regular way that I'm serving, how can I deepen it? How can I help a world in need? Does something call me to deepen what I'm doing, to continue what I'm doing, or even to act in some further way? You know, am I called to contribute to one of the core systemic issues of our time? Maybe to contribute on questions of racism or climate issues, or maybe economic inequality. You know, a number of people I work with have told me they're really called, and we've often done a practice together where I ask them, okay, how much time do you have a week to devote to this issue? Or first of all, what issue? One person might say climate issues. How much time do you have to devote to this? 5 hours. Okay. Research the possible ways you might contribute. You know, often this meant finding out about groups. Then come back next month and we'll work with it. One person came back saying, I found out, I researched it. Here's the group I want to work with. And that person has been doing that for 1.5 years, 5 hours a week. So we can ask those kind of questions. What calls me? It's really being inspired by the Buddhist figure of the Bodhisattva, who combines inner work with outer response. This is from Dorothy Day, who is a spiritual activist, as many of you know, founded Catholic Worker. The greatest challenge of the day is how to bring about a revolution of the heart. You will know your vocation by the joy it brings you. It's echoing Howard Thurman. You will know when it's right. Don't worry about being effective. Just concentrate on being faithful to the truth. So listening for what calls one. So I'm going to finish, and then we can open things up for discussion. I'm going to finish with a poem by David White, which is really about listening for what comes next. I think right at the heart of our spiritual practice, listening for what comes next. When I work one-on-one with people, one of my main intentions, if not the main intention, is for me to listen for what might come next for that person, and then to help with a process where that person is also listening. And in our sessions, often getting in touch with that. So this is David White about that next step. It's called Just Beyond Yourself. Just beyond yourself, it's where you need to be. Half a step into self-forgetting and the rest restored by what you'll meet. There is a road always beckoning. When you see the two sides of it closing together at that far horizon and deep in the foundations of your own heart at exactly the same time, that's how you know it's where you have to be. That's how you know it's where you have to go. That's how you know it's the road you have to follow. That's how you know you have to go. That's how you know it's just beyond yourself, and it's where you need to be. So thank you for your practice. Thank you for your kind attention, for your kindness of listening. And we can open things up now to any sharing of what's particularly helped for you in terms of deepening, any questions, suggestions, comments. Again, I'm inviting us to tune into what you might have felt right before I got into my talk about what calls you.
I'll share a couple of things. Thank you for your talk, Donald. That arose for me. I know with just my daily practice when the pandemic started, I was in a good rhythm of morning and evening practice, and that's really waned a lot. The past couple weeks, I've sort of moved away from judgment around it, and but really like allowing myself to look at like the daily life, and I'm realizing I'm like, okay, right now, like if I'm not getting under the cushion as much as I would like, I'm going to put more attention on my daily practice, and like really let that be my work now. Mm-hmm. So it was affirming to hear you tie these three things together, for me, and just some hints and like technique, that helped affirm that, in a great way. So, and, I like that idea of picking one thing you do every day and just letting it, what came to me is it can be an anchor into practice, this idea of anchoring into practice. So
Thanks, David. Yeah, we often say, being aware, practicing, being mindful is not hard. Remembering to be mindful or aware, that's hard, right? That's what's hard. And so, what helps other people? What helps you to, remind yourself to be present? And again, it could be for some of us, it might be more mindfulness, awareness. For some of us, it might be having wisdom. What's wise right now? For some, it might be the door of the heart, more kindness, compassion.
Mark has his hand up.
Okay.
Good morning.
Hi.
Those are good questions, I'd like to just touch on, there's the daily practice, but I'm going to bring up the daily habit, which is to, I say it like that for that reason, because I've always been a news junkie, someone who's always interested in current affairs. So I find myself, which I often do, is go and listen to the news, and then I get into my fits of rage or upset or all of those things. So I'm well aware of this, obviously, I'm not finding it easy to contain it in a way that's kind of a bit more balanced, and sometimes, and And so I'm trying to find a way, and I do have a daily practice, and I'm, taking a class with right speech, and there's all sorts of things I integrate into my day, and I have some sense of how I want to continue to do that and to deepen those practices. There's always those periods of upset, which really comes from me, from listening to the news and listening to the current affairs as they are. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really crucial question. How many can relate to different aspects of those comments from Mark? Yeah. I want to focus on two areas. One is just the amount of input that we take in with the news, and then how to work with the emotions and thoughts that come up. And I was thinking, in terms of the first one, it's something that, in talking with people, and in my own experience, it's a big issue. In other words, I've done some experiments where I've done retreats at home where I was pretty much doing like what I do in a residential retreat, but I was also on the internet and doing emails. And I wanted to study what my motivation was and what was in my mind when I was going to hear more news, right? And it's actually, what I found in doing those experiments was that there are aspects of an addictive quality with the news. And I found for myself that I actually was better off. At that time when I did the experiments, I was finding that I was, in my daily life, maybe taking about an hour and a half with news across the day. And I found that a half an hour was fully adequate. And often I had the core of the news, I had the understanding, but I wanted to go back to see what was happening or find something new or go into detail on this. And it actually, in the balance of my life, it actually wasn't so helpful. And I have this discussion with a lot of people, in who I talk to. I was talking to someone just yesterday who was saying, for some people it's the amount. For some people it's the time of day. There's some people who just surf the internet in the evening. And one person I was talking to said, I totally need a curfew not to be going after the information for this person after 9 p.m. because it sort of upsets the day. So there are some questions about amount, time, and so forth. And then there are the questions of how we work with what comes up, right? With the upset, or there's a lot to be aware of that's quite disturbing, of many, many kinds. And so again, that might be a question of how much we take in, but also then to, ideally to find ways of being skillful with what comes up, whether it's anger, frustration, anxiety, despair, sadness, whatever. Our practice gives us good ways of working with that. I think it's also very important to be able to talk with people about this and to have ways even of bringing out the emotions. I've been very influenced over the years by Joanna Macy's work. How many of you know her work on having groups where people come together and actually let the deeper emotions come out? I think that's important to do periodically. One can do that just with a few friends. Maybe could do it in a morning for GBF. Anyway, there's a lot there, Mark, but those are some initial responses. Thanks. Yeah, I see John with a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. This has been very wonderful talk. What I'm finding I need actually is inspiration. I'm very much of an introvert. I'm quite happy kind of swimming around in my inner world here alone in my home. But what used to give me inspiration and stimulation was actually interpersonal connection, going to groups, being with others. And I just find the virtual connection doesn't quite make for that stimulation, that inspiration. So one reason why I came this morning is because I feel like every day I need some kind of inspiration in order to see what the next step is on the road.
Yeah. Yeah. How many can relate to that question in some way? Yeah. I think quite a few. Some things, John, which come to me is one of the ways that inspiration comes can be through a kind of intimacy of communication and connection. And so I'm wondering if there might be one or two friends that if maybe groups like this can be mostly we take in things, we're a little more receptive. They can be inspiring. But I'm thinking that sometimes just a group of 3 or 4 people who meet regularly, who are all committed to practice, sharing and inspiring, and even having a certain level of accountability for each other, could be one way of bringing about that inspiration. You might also try. Have you tried any of the retreats, even virtual retreats?
Not extended ones, just like a few hours or a morning or something.
A few hours or morning, because it's possible. We find inspiration in different ways. One of it's by the interpersonal connection, like you're saying. I think we also find it in going deeper in our own being. So I would encourage finding ways to go deeper, and retreats are one way to do that. Right? So those are a few ideas, maybe even others if you want to speak up and share what keeps you inspired at this time. That's it, because I think the question, John, is a wonderful one. Thank you.
Cass has his hand up. Cass, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. I guess I've gone through periods like I'm not sure whether I'm becoming more alive or whether I'm just noticing things that I didn't notice before. And so like, I'm certainly noticing around the house, there's a lot more things that could use some cleaning. But I'm also, I guess one of the things that I've noticed is how masks have started becoming kind of sexy for me. And I'm not sure if I'm just coming more alive and experiencing things deeper, or I'm just getting horny. It's like, so, I guess the question, there isn't really a question. I guess it's just like, being quieter and living a more sedate lifestyle and not running around as much gives us the opportunity to just experience things more deeply, I guess, and to contemplate things and to mull things over and to just notice things, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks, Cass. It's well said. I'm sure how many could relate to one or more of the aspects of what Cass was talking about. The greater mindfulness of the need for house cleaning, or the noticing horniness or whatever, right? So, yeah, okay. Do we have others, David, or how are we doing for time?
We're doing okay on time. We certainly have, if other people have any thoughts they want to share or questions.
Yeah, I was particularly interested in what helps keep you feeling inspired. I thought that was a great question.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm out here in the nether reaches of Arizona. Thank you, Donald. I've heard some of your talks on Dharma Seed and enjoyed that connection as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to put a plug in for voteforward.org. and we are doing outreach to people who have a voting record, an inconsistent voting record, I would say, in the swing states. Specifically, I've been writing to Texas and Arizona people, encouraging them to vote, and a little handwritten paragraph of why I vote in every election. And it's given me a sense of I'm doing something anyway. I don't know. You have to give up your ambitions in terms of efficacy, but I feel like I'm doing something, and it gives me, I can spend an hour a day on it or so and have these letters pile up that'll go out just before the election in November.
Yeah.
And, so that's one organization that, I'd like to plug. I'd also like to get involved in an environmental outreach like that. And if anyone has a organization, a pet organization, I could investigate. I'd like to know who, any connection in the chat room would be welcome. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Yeah. And that, the voting area is just so crucial in the next election, obviously. Yeah. But just to find, that could be a way really to act. And I'm reminded of a line from Angeles Arian. She said, action alleviates anxiety. Very interesting. Yeah, that when we're actually acting and knowing we're helping in some way, something in us, I think, has some further rest, some peace. So I see Thomas has a raised hand.
Hey, Donald, thank you very much. On the question of what inspires me or, keeps me active or focused, whatever, I think anything that I can do that gives me a sense of agency, or control over the outcome, because there's so much that's going on over which I have no control, and so when I do that, I try and make it something that is not political related, not social activism related. So I think this is why a lot of people are baking and cooking at home, because cooking is something where you can control, take some action, see an outcome. It sort of has an immediate satisfaction about it. And I've been tending to my house plants and, things like that. So it's small, but, I'm doing a lot in other arenas. So I try to, when I do these things, I try and make sure they are not taking on the cares of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Thomas. And just to see what has one feeling connected, inspired. I was also thinking for many people, it could be, something similar like gardening. Or even, then even helping others by knowing that there's a certain number of people, who might, need help, or maybe one can help provide them with, good food, in some way.
There's a guy I've encountered on my morning walks who's living under a bridge here. And so I've started to engage with him, just talk with him and ask him how he's doing, see if he needs anything. And he seems pretty self-sufficient, but perhaps just that human contact is what he and I both need.
Yeah. Just finding what's there just in the daily flow. Yeah, because it's... Anyone else want to share what inspires you?
Yeah, I'm inspired by the people who are hitting the streets and engaging in demonstrations and things, speaking up for social justice and anti-racist. They're totally inspiring, and I see the ripple effects. I see people are like selling T-shirts, with anti-racist slogans and things like that. So it feels like it's rippling through our society.
Yeah. Again, it seems like the potential is there for really significant change and a kind of broad movement that's as big as anything in the last 50 years, bigger than. And the challenge is how to have that occur during the pandemic. It's amazing, yeah. There's great potential. I was thinking that David, you mentioned John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, and he wants some inspiration. There's a wonderful film that was made. It was a PBS film made. Some of you may know this. It was basically a history of nonviolence called A Force More Powerful. And they had 6 episodes. It was on PBS, and a lot of it's on YouTube right now. And one of the episodes, they had 6 of them. They had, Gandhi in India, South Africa. I think they had Poland. But they had Nashville, 1960, and the movement there. John Lewis was part of that. C.T. Vivian's also in the film. And so if you look that up on YouTube, it's one of the most inspiring, it's just half an hour, just really inspiring document that shows John Lewis at about 20 years old, one of the leaders of that movement, along with a number of other people, mentored by the Reverend James Lawson, some of you may know, who's still in his 80s down in LA.
Thank you, Donald. And thank you, everybody, very much for joining us today. And thank you for your talk. And those who shared. I want to open it up for a moment for any announcements, events that people might have. Easiest if you just unmute and go for it. Then if not, I want to encourage...
David, could I start? I have 2.
Oh, please go. Yes.
Yeah. One is that I'll be speaking for Spirit Rock on Wednesday morning, 10 to 12, meditation, talk, discussion. And I think it'll be related to the theme today. So it'll be sort of probably taking deeper. And then secondly, I'm teaching for Sacramento Buddhist meditation group on August 8th, a day long. It's actually very closely related to what I taught about a year ago at GBF that was in the newsletter. It's called Dukkha and the End of Dukkha. Dukkha is usually translated by suffering, but it'll be a whole day long on that. And it'll primarily be inner practice, but I'll make some connection to the larger social events. Okay, so that's on my website, Donald Rothberg .org.
I just added it to the chat if people want to go quick easily. Yeah. Thank you. And next week, we have David Riccio presenting. I just added that to the chat as well. And as a reminder, the Sangha is sustained and our teachers by Donna. So we encourage everybody this afternoon when you get off to visit the GBF website to make a contribution, a meaningful one that feels right for you if you're able to. And some of that goes to continue to support the San Francisco Buddhist Center that I'm sure, as we know, businesses are not faring easily right now. And so really proud of GBF for continuing to support them when we can't be there physically, as well as our teachers. And there is a GBF Google group. So if people, want to stay connected, that's another place to share. Also, certainly sharing resources. It's a great place to share resources with other Sangha members near and far. So please never hesitate to send out links or websites or ideas or questions throughout the week. And then also on Wednesdays, GBF has a Wednesday sit. And I believe it's at 6:30, but the time
7:30.
7:30. Thank you. 7:30 to 9. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that the information's on the website. Good. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? Anybody?
Just a reminder, if I might, you had mentioned about Dana, and for people to give what they're comfortable. And we ask people to start their consideration in the $10 to $15 range. Less if that's more comfortable, more if that's comfortable as well.
Great, thank you. Can make it a little easier by adding the link to the chat as well. So, well, thank you everybody for joining, for bringing your practice and your inspirations. Donald, would you like to do the dedication of merit?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy
That'd be
to.
Great. I love it when our guests can. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so first starting by remembering whether something calls to you from your own reflection as to next steps or something that came up during the talk or discussion. What's your next step and how might you even bring it into being in the next few days? And then we finish by remembering that we practice very much for our own well-being, also for the well-being of those in our own circles, and also for the well-being of those beyond our own circles, ultimately for all beings. May the benefit of our morning, our time together, be there for all beings, always remembering that that includes us. Thanks, everyone. Until next time.
Namaste.
Thanks, Donald. Thank you, David.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.